Have you been wondering where all the love and creativity has gone in today's most popular tunes? Stick around and find out as we explore the state of urban music next on Views and Vibes. The face of urban music has probably changed more than any other genre over the past 50 years. From the Motown sound of the 60s until today, new stars have delivered new impressions on music's most influential field. To help us better understand where urban music is today and where it's headed, our recording artist, Ms. Miriamm Wright, and recording artist, Mr. Patrick Washington. Welcome to the show, you guys. Welcome to Views and Vibes. And Patrick, welcome back to Views and Vibes.
Yes, I'm loving it. Glad to be here.
Haven't seen you since our first season. We're in season 3 now.
Right, on hip hop.
Yeah, we had hip hop and poetry back then. Right. Now we're doing urban music, the broad topic of urban music. What is urban music? You know, how do you define urban music? Go ahead, Patrick.
How would you define urban music? You know what? I would start off with the blues, you know.
Okay.
You know, that's where.
So you're going way backwards.
Well, you know, that's kind of where I remember, you know, where my musical beginnings, you know, where, you know, my father, you know, he was known as, you know, Hoochie Coochie Man, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was he a performer too?
Well, no, but, you know,
he just
loved the music. Yeah,
okay.
He just loved the music,
All
and
right.
that was kind of his nickname.
Okay.
And so I was raised as a, you know, blues, you know, in the midst of the blues. And, you know, my understanding is that, you know, it came out of that, you know, music, urban music, the idea of, you know, urban music came from that. It's not necessarily a physical location that we're talking about. It's more of a mentality.
Okay.
You know, and I guess once, you know, the migration from up, you know, from the south, down south up to the, you know, other northern cities, you know, and the musicians that came out of that, I think that's where the whole idea of urban music started.
So then, even using the example you use, you could probably go back to slavery.
Absolutely.
You know, and the way that that, you know, the enslaved folks were you know, doing their own music, you know, independent from what was being played in or sung in the masses' home. Yeah. Miriamm, how about you? How would you define urban music?
I definitely agree with what you said, but I believe that, not a but at all, but except for that one. Urban music is the sound of a people, and yeah, it can go back to slavery, but it really takes roots in Africa. So
It's going way back.
yeah, I mean, that's where your roots are, where you start. So you can think about the call and response that's taken place through, you know, from Africa in the tribal setting, coming through slavery, in the churches with the hymns and the spirituals.
Right.
Urban music is music of a people.
Okay.
And it's how we communicated. I think it took a different label in the 70s, 80s, when the music industry really wanted to capitalize on it.
Right.
So it became a way for them to soften the image of African American people so that it could become a global type of medium.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. But when you look at urban music, you know, what does it include? I mean, especially today. What do you, or even back in the 70s? You know, what categories of music will fall under the label urban?
I think definitely hip hop, rap,
Okay.
R&B. They're, you know, nowadays throwing some pop in there. So you'll find some Katy Perry's and some Pinks included in urban music, because you have a Nicki Minaj now, and, you know, to me, it's such a blur now, whereas before it was an identity for black music, and it was a way to communicate that on a global level.
Yeah, it was our, you know, it was our way of communicating with each other, like you said, you know, and I guess over time, it has kind of evolved into a bigger thing, and it encompasses, which is what we do very well anyway. You know, we, you know, especially like with hip hop and but I know our culture specifically, we're very good at incorporating other elements and making something new out of it.
Right. It's forever evolving.
Right.
Urban music is.
Absolutely.
But let's take it back to when the commercialization of urban music began, really in the 50s. With doo-wop. When they would have black songs and black performers, but they would have white faces on the album.
Right.
Moving to the 60s with Motown. Think about that time versus the 70s versus the 80s. In the 70s you had the funk. So you went from the Motown sound to the funk in the 70s, and even the New Jack Swing era of the 80s. Talk about the transition of urban music, where, you had rock and roll at one point was urban music, with Chuck Berry, and then it evolved into something else. Talk about that. How is that urban music has been able to evolve so much, and how has it been able to include so many different genres over the time?
Well, you pointed out the first part is that, I guess, number one, we weren't marketable at one point.
Right.
At all. And it was better to, like you said, whitewash that album cover and switch the faces.
Right. Or even redo the songs. That it might have been popular in a black area, but then they would have white people redo
have the Beach
songs.
Boys redo it, or whoever.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. So so I think around the 70s, maybe mid to late 70s, I guess that change happened.
Or became more accepting?
Became more accepting, because I guess during that era, we began, there was the market. We began creating our own market. You know what I mean?
But couldn't you say that about Motown though? Because even if you go back to the early '60s, Motown, isn't that the same kind of thing?
Yeah.
Where that became very, very marketable.
Yeah.
And Berry Gordy was killing them. Money-wise.
Yeah, he found, black people spend money.
Yeah.
So
But white folks are also buying it, and that's the whole thing about the commercialization of urban music. At one point they weren't buying our music.
Right.
But with the advent of rock and roll into the Motown sound, that's when they began to really, adopt our music as their own. So when you see that happening, and I guess this is what I'm trying to get at. Were we trying to kind of stay ahead of the curve because we were seeing a lot of our music being co-opted by the system? Is that one way to look at the way that we evolved? Because if you look at rock and roll, and going back to Chuck Berry again, that was, I don't know if I want to say that was soul music at the time, but that was urban music at one point. But then with Elvis Presley coming on and then the Beatles, they kind of took the whole rock thing away. But at the same time, that's when the Motown sound began to develop. Were we trying to stay ahead of the curve? Were we trying to continue to do our own thing because we know we were losing things in the process, just like jazz? Or just like the blues?
So you're asking, is the emergence of soul that attempt to stay ahead of the curve?
The emergence of all the different categories that are now defined as urban music, were those attempts to try to stay ahead of us losing those?
I don't think it was an attempt for us not to lose it. I think we're constantly giving birth to new ideas. So things are going to evolve.
Right.
You're not going to stay in one place, and that's life. So I'm grateful that our music continues to move in different places and find creative ways to communicate a story of a people, of a community.
Right.
So I don't think it was because we were trying to stay ahead of it, but I think
it's
a product of it was,
I get kind of disappointed in our people sometimes, because I feel like a lot of times we abandon something that we create, and I don't know if it's because we're ahead of the curve and our minds are just moving so quickly, or if we just get bored with it, or if we lose interest after someone else co-opts it. I don't know. I haven't figured out why that happens, but I kind of feel that way about hip hop to a certain extent.
Right.
That's what happened as far as the essence of hip hop.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
It's not the same anymore, and I think.
But even like looking at rock and roll, at one point that was considered urban music, but then in the 70s, I remember talking to like Moon Man when I did a radio show. People were not into Jimi Hendrix at all. Black people, even talking about parents, black folks were not into Jimi Hendrix at all in the 70s.
Right.
But then, so at the same time we had new things coming through, like hip hop was starting to emerge, and like I said, funk, and had the whole jazz fusion thing going on. So we let that go. But then we've also let other things go too. But we have to take a break. When we come back after the break, we're going to talk more about where we are right now in terms of urban music and continue on from there. So see you in 2 minutes. back to Views and Vibes, guys. That's our very own Miriamm Wright singing Loving You right here on Views and Vibes. I love your voice.
Thank you.
You're such a talented artist. Would you consider yourself urban?
I would.
You would. You would. So let's talk about what urban music is today. You know, where are we with urban music? We've transitioned from the 60s with Motown, 70s funk, 80s, New Jack Swing era. Where are we now? And what really defines urban music today?
I think today's urban music is a combination of a word that Patrick doesn't want me to use.
Uh-oh.
Neo soul, baby.
But
Neo soul, R&B, pop, it's all blended so much that the lines are blurred. But at the beginning, middle, and end of the day, you know, it's a genre of music that has funky beats, tells a wonderful story, and the melody moves to a point where it engrosses the audience.
Patrick, what artists do you think, or which group of artists would you consider to be the standard bearers of today's urban music?
Standard bearers.
Yeah, who's the leader? When you look at urban music, you know, the broad landscape of urban music, who are the leaders?
You know,
Jill Scott?
Okay, see, really, she's mentioning artists like, you know, of an organic nature, like Jill Scott or Anthony Hamilton.
Let's talk about people who's actually getting radio play. Let's talk about that. Let's go there. Okay. Jill gets one song on the radio like every 3 years now. So you know, who's really leading?
I would, you know, the people that jump out at me are people like, you know, Usher. You know, Trey Songz. You know, Keisha Cole. You know, urban.
Mary J.
Mary J.
What about Beyonce? What about Jay-Z? I mean, are they?
You know what? Those names kind of
beyond.
Those names kind of transcended, I think, into pop.
Okay.
You know, I mean, although they started squarely in that genre, you know, and I don't know I can't call what catapulted them into pop, but yeah, they started.
So where is that line between pop and urban then? You know, popular music versus, you know, what would be considered just urban music. Things that we played on particular radio stations and that wouldn't make it onto, you know, some of the more top 40 radio stations. Where is that line? Who walks that line?
Yeah, I don't know. I think Beyonce definitely does. Lil Weezy, he does. Usher does. Chris Brown does. Nicki Minaj and Rihanna definitely. They are all walking that line. You can hear them on any given day, all day, on KYS, on PGC, on iHeartRadio. So
there's I would say there's a financial muscle, you know. There's a certain corporate push that, you know, I think to catapult you into pop.
Right.
I think that's the bottom line for me.
Well, where is the money behind urban music now? I mean, is it there? Is it as strong as it used to be? Because it seems like now you have what used to be urban radio stations changing their formats to be more crossover.
Right.
So what's happening to the money behind urban music? Why isn't there such a strong push as there once was?
Probably because of the downloads and the way that you can access the music, and kids don't listen to a whole album anymore where you can really get engrossed in, you know, one artist's movement. So on my playlist, I have everyone from Phoebe Snow to Tina Marie to Minnie Riperton to Luther to Lupe Fiasco. Is that his name?
Yeah.
That's who I have on, and he's on my iPod. So there's so many options nowadays. I don't really think they need to have that major push behind that one artist anymore. The record industry has changed.
But is there even, you know, money going behind one artist? At one time, artists had a chance to develop, particularly in urban music. You know, you look at somebody like a Stevie Wonder. You know, how far he came from when he started in the 60s all the way through to the 80s when he really was at his peak. You know, why aren't urban artists really getting the chance to develop? Like, you have to have like one major hit, and if you don't get that hit, you're gone. You know, why aren't they having the chance, or even given the chance to develop?
I mean, you know, the game got saturated, you know, to a sickening degree, you know, throughout most of the, you know, 2000s. You know what I mean? I guess probably starting in the 90s and throughout the 2000s, the game just got saturated. So it probably would behoove an artist more to go the indie route. You know, as far as development is concerned, you know what I mean, to develop yourself in arts. You know, myself and a lot of people I know, Raheem Devon, you know, he's right alongside with me on U Street, you know, and we developed as artists in a different way, you know, and I think that is how we stand apart from those other artists. I mean, we can rock just as hard as, you know, any of these other, you
Right.
know, big names, but we just don't get the muscle.
And the reality is they don't have to develop anymore. You know, these kids are on American Idol, X Factor,
Right.
and you see that. They don't have to
They have
do
more instant fame now.
Yeah, they
Right.
don't have to do that anymore.
But isn't
so.
that more detrimental to the end product? Because what you have are people who are quick to become stars, but they don't really know how to handle the fame, and they haven't really had a chance to develop the sound.
Yeah, we were just watching that on the show. Like 15, 16-year-olds, you know,
Yeah.
they get shoved out there and,
Right.
you know, they're wobbly knees like Bambi, you know, trying to sing.
Right.
You know, and, you know, they may get selected by CeeLo or whoever, but then, you know, God knows what's going to happen after you know, get cut loose, or if they take you into the back room and dress you up like anything they want. You know what I mean?
Right.
You're not yourself anymore.
Right.
And they don't care. I mean, the reality is they have so many people out there, and that's why they're getting them younger and younger. It's an insatiable beast.
Right.
So they don't really have to. They don't have to put the money behind an artist that is, you know, an urban artist, for lack of a better term. And I also think that, I don't know if anybody else noticed, but really in the days of, you know, when Michael Jackson came out from Thriller to Bad, he became such an icon.
Right.
But he had vision. He used creative juices. He had an imagination, and he did so much more. But that was the first pop artist, and from then it seems like people are trying to recapture that moment, that movement, that artistry. And you're bringing them in younger and younger, and you're just throwing them out there because they feel like they can mold them into what they want them to be.
That will never happen again.
It
Like
won't.
those
Right.
those big artists, you know, those who sold, you know,
superstars,
like upwards of 10 million, you know,
Units.
Yeah, that's not going to happen ever again. You know, the Bobby Browns and da. You know, that's over. You know,
Right.
there's a lot of small stars. You know what I mean? But via the internet or
Right.
what, you know. So.
Right. Well, what about you know, when you look at the way that the sound of urban music has been defined, like you look at Motown sound, you look at you know, like I keep bringing up the New Jack Swing era, or even Michael Jackson, you know, his music in the '80s. You know, just name one producer who you feel really defines urban music now. Is it? I mean, I'm not saying you have to like it, but who do you think? What's one producer you think really defines where urban music is now? I mean, like
I'm
Neo
gonna let you
did.
go. I'm gonna let you go first, and then I'll.
It set you up.
Can I phone a friend?
Okay.
I'm thinking Wyclef Jean.
Really? In urban music?
He.
You believe?
He discovered Beyonce, and
to a
Okay.
certain degree.
All right.
I'm also thinking a little too long because we have to go to break. But who are you thinking?
Kanye West.
Kanye?
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. I mean, I
Yeah.
was thinking like a few years ago, you had Neo. Was like his sound was like everybody was
Yeah.
going Neo. He's like the guy that everybody ran to for
Yeah,
new
he was like the
production.
baby face of 2000s.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, we do have to run the break. So when we come back from break, we will continue this conversation about urban music and get into where it's going, so you know where to find it. After this.
Everything must change. Nothing stays. You call my name, and you know I'm gonna treat you right. You give me fever when you kiss me, fever when you hold me tight. Fever in the morning.
Welcome back, guys, to Views and Vibes. Got a little Miriamm right there, singing a little Fever. That girl could sing. And just so you know, that Patrick with the Poem C's, he be rocking it too, you know, so you have to keep an eye out for them. They have a new project out as well.
Yes, it's called Everything You've Always Wanted.
Love it.
Yes.
Nice, nice. Well, let's talk about where urban music is going. You know, when you look at the way that we talked about downloads earlier, you know, you look at the influence of the internet, you look at, you know, these reality shows, and you see how people are becoming stars right now some are putting the time and grinding it out, you know, and doing the YouTube way, and then you have those people on TV. Where do you see urban music going at this point? Or how are we going to get our stars of tomorrow? And who are the stars of tomorrow?
I'm a believer in
Other than yourselves, of course.
Absolutely.
Right.
I'm a believer that everything repeats itself. So when things get so crazy or so, not crazy, but when they're in a state where everything is just the same, someone comes out like a Sade or an Anita Baker, like right now, have I told you I love you? You know, it stands out from a lot of the other things that are taking place.
Just keep singing.
So I'm excited because I have a daughter, and my daughter sings, and she has an opportunity to switch from Nikki to Anita and understand that within her realm, her generation, she stands on those shoulders, and she is the future. She is going to be the next one to tell her story.
Right.
And I'm excited about that. She has the benefit of the beats over here and the hooks over here and the Beyonce over here and, you know, putting it all together to tell her story.
Right.
So I'm incredibly excited and encouraged about urban music because it's not something that's dying or dead.
It's not stagnant.
It's evolving.
Right, right.
You can't evolve and be stagnant.
Right. What do you think, man?
It sounds like a proud parent, you know. But
Right.
but that's great. You know, I feel that. You know, because, you know, I have kids also, and I watch them developing as artists also. So, you know, that's, you know, down the line. But that's good parenting. You know, and that's also.
And we talked about that. We talked about that in the show we did before, just about the influence of you on your children versus just if they didn't have parents who were, you know, into music like you were. You know, would they still be developing the way they are if they only had the radio or television to influence
Oh my
them?
goodness, exactly, because, you know, your kids can, without good parenting and a parent who knows musical history and can point out, you know, the good from the bad, your kid can grow up, you know, singing, you know, what's it, bands that make her dance, and think that's great
good
hip hop,
music, right?
You know,
Right.
So you definitely need to be involved, you know, in your child.
But you have to be educated yourself.
Right.
You know, you have to be
Absolutely.
basically an informed consumer in order to make that happen.
You must be. So,
Right.
so that's number one. But as for, I guess you want the names of some artists who are out there now.
Yeah, well, who is the future of urban music at this point? You know, not even looking at the whole pop realm, who's going to cross over to pop, but who is the future of, you know, that more narrow genre of urban music?
I would say, you know, there's the generation that is politically aware, you know, and they're going to be, you know, socially conscious. I feel that, you know, it's coming around. Things, you know, work in the cycle. You know what I mean? That's how I feel. And I think that consciousness from, you know, that we remember,
From like
you
the
know,
80s and 90s.
it's coming back.
Okay.
I feel like it's going to come back.
Right, right. And who do you see that in now? What artists do you see that in now?
You know, we mentioned Lupe, I guess, when we were off camera, you know, and he's very much one of those.
What about like Esperanza Spalding or you know, those kind of?
Esperanza. Who else? I mean, there's quite a few. I mean, you know, Raheem. There's.
I just got put on to recently to this woman by the name of Nanika. Have you heard of her?
Nanika, yes.
Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
wonderful voice. You know,
She's great.
I think she's she's from South Africa, somewhere in there. You know?
And Algebra is out there as well.
Algebra, Blessed.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're
Lettucey, you know, she is, I know, a little more mature, but, you know, really appreciating that she's brought back that sound.
What about outside of soul? What about more R&B? Who's really, you know, up and coming with that right now?
Can't call that one.
I
That's
can't
too
call
sure.
it, but
You
I
got
know
the bias, man. Y'all focus so much on your soul music
Well,
and your conscious hip hop, you know.
well, I know Mary J ain't going nowhere. I'm loving her evolution.
Right.
So, and we just saw her on The Voice. So, you know, she's definitely going to be a fixture that continues to mold and shape the industry.
I mean, is
really
it,
excited about that.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not trying to be down on, you know,
The more commercialized.
yeah, commercialized music, but it, you know, just by the nature of it, you know, it doesn't reach out and touch your soul.
Right,
You know,
right.
and that's what we're talking about. I mean, well,
Okay.
you know what I mean. So,
I feel you. I feel you.
I mean, urban music, you know, can teach, it can educate, it can, heal, but
And does.
you know, but a lot of times, you know, you have to get through that corporate filter first.
Right.
You know, so.
Well, so we have to, you know, leave in a few seconds. So, Miriamm, why don't you tell us where we can find your music? You know.
You can find it on cdbaby.com, and you can find it at Blues Alley. October 29th, I'll be there turning Blues Alley pink.
We might not be
Breast
on by
cancer
October 29th,
awareness.
so that might not work, but they can definitely find you on CD Baby.
They can.
Okay,
And
all right. How many albums do you have?
www.miriam.com. 3.
All right, so I'm sorry, say your website again?
www.miriam.com, MIRIAMM. And of course on Facebook.
Okay, all right. And Patrick?
Poem Seas, Everything You've Always Wanted. It's actually available for free download, so you can go to poemseas.com, POEMCEES.
And you can also go back to some old episodes of Deaf Poetry. If you want to see my man Patrick get down, he kills it on there. Just kills it on a couple different occasions. Bad man. But anyway, I want to thank Miriamm Wright and Patrick Washington for coming on and joining us today. If you want to find out more about my guests, make sure you tune into our website, viewsandvibes.com. Until next time, I'm Tariiq Omari Walton, and this has been Views and Vibes.